For my review today, we're going to be talking about Acolyte of the Altar, a kind of boss-centric focus take on the deck-building roguelike. And while it has some very interesting ideas for enemy and card design, it can't escape the most nastiest Lovecraftian god of all, and that is the god of RNG. Our story is that you are trying to appease the god of choice in a Lovecraftian world, and to make them happy, you are going to have to sacrifice the various beasts that roam the land to see which god will come out on top. And that's going to require you to fight a lot of very interesting, challenging, and somewhat frustrating battles. As I said at the start, Acolyte of the Altar is built on this kind of boss rush focus. So you're not fighting minor enemies in this one. Every battle is with what we probably classify as a boss class enemy in other deck builders. The closest comparison I think I could give to this game would be something like the solo or story-based expansion challenges that Hearthstone introduced back in the 2010s, when you're fighting an enemy who has their own rules and ways of playing, while you're kind of using the traditional deck building. At the start of a run, you can choose from one of 3 different gods as both your major and minor. The major god determines what kind of passive bonus you get for that run, and the minor one will give you kind of cards of that specific faction, with each faction, of course, having different cards, abilities, playstyles, etc. One faction is kind of all about the slow burn, that they have powerful cards that only activate when the beast is kind of in full I'm going to kill you mode, while another faction has cards that relate to kind of sacrificing minions to make their cards better. Once you win a match, you can choose from randomly chosen cards to add to your deck, and the cycle continues with the next fight. The enemy designs or boss designs in Acolyte, as I said, are really quite interesting. How it all works is that each monster, again, is a unique one-off. They have different skills and different passives that relate to them. As the match goes on, the enemies don't necessarily scale, but more and more of their skills will become kind of active. This will allow them to do more damage, affect your cards, and other ways. You have means of stopping damage. One of the factions gets kind of like a spirit shield, but all in all, this is a game where you want to kill the enemies as fast as you can. And because of that, the mana cost for most of your creatures is going to be on the low side, but there are lots of conditionals to how cards can work and proc. And when you do get those big cards, the 9-10 mana cost ones, they are kind of like dropping the bomb on the board in terms of what they can impact and the amount of damage they do. Your health will recover slightly after each match, but you're going to have to again keep it all the way from beginning to end. Now here's where Acolyte I think stumbles a little bit, at least in the 1.0 version. There really aren't as many ways to control or affect your build over the course of the run. This is not like Slay the Spire, where you're getting enough cards, there's enough encounters so you can build a surprisingly viable or just pure viable deck just by winning. Nor is this like a game such as Monster Train, or some of the later roguelikes like Balatro or Slice and Dice, where you get artifacts and things that allow your cards or your abilities to do different things. It's very plain in this respect, and that does come back to hurt the game. Because each enemy has very specific abilities to use, if you get the wrong beast that just counters what you have available, you lose. There is nothing you could have done, there's no amount of getting good, correct card play, anything like that. If, for instance, you fight an enemy who, anytime you summon a creature on the board, it just does like 1 or 2 points of damage for free, and your entire deck is 2 health enemies or 2 health cards, you're done. Like, that's it. Again, I like the theming and the style of this one. Some of the later beasts are really quite interesting in terms of their design and what you're supposed to do to fight them. In one example, you fight basically what is like a giant city, and every few turns it will attack and consume one of your monsters to strengthen its own. But if you use 0 cost or low damaging cards on the field, it completely counters it. And there are ways of shutting down the enemy. There are specific cards and spells that can mess with their interactions. But the issue again is at the end of the day, a lot has to go right for you to have any chance at winning. And I do hope they add more in terms of like mid-match ways or after-match ways of getting more cards, enhancing your cards, anything that the player can do to mitigate or at least try to control a little bit of the RNG. Now, one of the more interesting things about Acolyte the Altar is that after we play this one, the footage you're seeing is taken from Deck Builder's Fest, because it was a part of that festival. This is played with a full-on press key. Is that they've already announced a kind of post 1.0 roadmap, that they're going to be adding in new features, balancing some of the gods, so there is definitely potential in the future for Acolyte the Altar in terms of kind of removing these issues from it. But to kind of begin to wrap up this review, this is a very solid concept for a single player driven deck builder. I like this idea that instead of just fighting like the quote unquote trash mobs, it's all different and unique bosses. And if they can give the player as many cool abilities and strange effects as they do the various beasts, this could be a very entertaining roguelike for fans looking for a more, I guess, like, I'm not sure I would say advanced take on deck builders, but one that's going to require a little bit more than just playing all your best cards one after another. So with that, we're going to wrap up this review here. As I said, this was played with a press key, and I would like to thank the developers for giving me one. This one has been on my list for some time to check out. If you'd like me to tickle your game for a future stream and video, does not have to be any combination of decks, buildings, roguelikes, or whatever, please reach out. And with that said, everyone, have a great rest of your night, and see you next time. That's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to do the YouTubing stuff people tell you to do. If you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, check out my books wherever they are sold. Visit our Discord and Patreon, and come back for discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games.